The world's 5 fundamental errors. A social positivist video. Forward. Mankind made 5 crucial errors at the start of civilization. Historically, these errors are all associated with Babylon. All 5 errors are looked upon as great innovations. All 5 errors have served as the pillars of our civilizations. Collectively, they bring civilizations to ruin. These errors are the reason for all of our social costs. Social costs are the things society and future generations pay for, which were created directly or indirectly by the state. When social costs become excessive, societies fail. Social costs are unemployment, debt, poverty, inflation, taxation, pollution, and most crime. Social costs are not natural phenomena. They are not natural to civilization. They are costs created by one agent that are downloaded onto society and future generations. Economists refer to them as externalized costs. Regardless of what one calls them, they are the product of 5 major errors: the secular state, the use of assets as a medium of exchange, the replacement of human rights with legal rights, ownership as a legal right, and double-entry bookkeeping, otherwise known as institutionalization of liabilities. All these inventions originated in Babylon and are biblically associated with Nimrod. The secular state. Conventional knowledge sees the state as one of the great innovations of all time. The state. Genesis 10:9. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod the mighty hunter before the Lord, and the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh, in the land of Shinar. Out of the land went forth Asher, and builded Nineveh, and the city Rehoboth, and Calah, and arisen between Nineveh and Calah. The same is a great city. Nimrod built the great cities of the ancient world, including Babylon. In those days, a political jurisdiction was identified with a tribe or extended family. With the ascent of Nimrod rose the idea of a professional bureaucracy and government divorced from the people. 1 Samuel 8:4. Then all the elders of Israel gathered themselves together, and came to Samuel unto Ramah, and said unto him, Behold, thou art old, and thy sons walk not in thy ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations. But the thing displeased Samuel when they said, Give us a king to judge us. And Samuel prayed unto the Lord. And the Lord said unto Samuel, Hearken unto the voice of the people, in all that they say unto thee. For they have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them. The state was never in God's plan. We were to live as tribes or extended families. Our nations were to be as one peoples. Mankind corrupted this vision. The church was to be our new family under God. Ephesians 6:5. Servants, be obedient to them that are your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling, in singleness of your heart, as unto Christ, not with eye service as men pleasers, but as the servants of Christ, doing the will of God from the heart, with good will, doing service as to the Lord, and not to men, knowing that whatsoever good thing any man doeth, the same shall he receive of the Lord, whether he be bond or free. And ye masters, do the same things unto them, forbearing, threatening, knowing that your master also is in heaven, neither is there respect of persons with him. Christians are not to be peacemakers, regardless of our station. We are not to rebel against established authority, but we are also not to take advantage of a high position. What is wrong with the state? Not even communists really like the state, unless one is a bureaucrat, but a lot of people like the risk of capitalism even less. Taxation is a type of social cost. The state has no source of income other than the divestment of wealth from the polity. The problem of the state is well known. Governments intervene in the market. All interventions are founded on the belief the state has authority over the nation. This is not true. Ownership rests with the people, and more specifically with the church or the political jurisdictions. The people of a place own the assets of that location. This is the doctrine of dominion. We have a human right to life, and therefore to the resources that support life. These resources are the assets that make up our place where we live and work. The people of a place own that place by right. The principle of subsidiarity and parsimony tell us that the simplest solution is the best, meaning least costly. The state is simply an additional expense that is not needed. Money as an asset. Money has no value. One of the biggest errors mankind ever made was thinking money had or was supposed to have value. The perennial call to use bullion as currency is one such example. The error of money. Money has no value. It is simply a quantification of value or means of exchange. It is the physical manifestation of bookkeeping, a way to keep running accounts in a dynamic economy. When assets are used for money, it becomes a measure of its own value. Using something with value, such as cigarettes or gold as a currency, makes the asset more valuable, and the more valuable the base asset becomes, the more the money loses value compared to the base asset, causing inflation. The more dollars, for example, it takes to buy gold, if used as a backing for the currency, the less value the dollar has compared to gold, meaning gold becomes so valuable people do not want to spend it or trade it for currency. Thus trade becomes difficult and ultimately impossible. Everyone with gold as a base asset prefers to just hang on to it. Money is a measure of value, and like a ruler, the units which compose it have no intrinsic value. The positive solution is to introduce a currency that is no more than accounting units with no intrinsic value, thereby ending the problem of inflation. Double-entry bookkeeping. Double-entry bookkeeping was on the surface an incredible invention that allowed accounts to be kept in a way that enabled accurate accounts to be kept and verified. But there was a problem. Double-entry bookkeeping also institutionalized debt and risk. Double-entry bookkeeping. Double-entry bookkeeping is the practice of using a minimum of 2 accounts for each transaction. This appears a sane and reasonable practice. Each account has 2 sides, the debit and credit columns. A third may also be added. Double-entry bookkeeping uses 4 main accounts: assets, liabilities, income, and expenses. Asset accounts represent things a business owns, such as cash and capital goods. Liability accounts show what the firm owes, for example, mortgages, loans for equipment, and credit card balances. Income accounts represent money received, for example, sales revenue and interest income. Expense accounts show money spent, for example, purchased goods for sale, payroll costs, rent, and advertising. The problem is liabilities represent risk, and risk increases cost. Positive bookkeeping is cash-based and eliminates liabilities, and in so doing eliminates risk and the costs associated with the compensating for risk. Human rights versus legal rights. There is an insidious replacement of human rights with legal rights. Human rights are inalienable. Legal rights are privileges offered by the state. Human rights are not dependent on governments. They must reside in the people. The right to live is a human right. So long as governments assess risk and punishments for us, the rights we have are not human rights, but de facto have become legal rights. We have a right to life only so far as the state believes the law has been contravened. This is not the hallmark of a true human right. We have right to the resources needed for life, that is, to the assets on which our communities are based. If our communities do not own what is needed to sustain them, they face higher than necessary risks. Social positivism has the tools you need to reduce risk. Reliance on governments to mediate legal rights increases our risk. Social positives introduce the tools you need to supplant the state with citizen-owned institutions. Private ownership confused with personal ownership. Free trade and free markets. Capitalism is not the opposite of socialism or communism. The opposite of capitalism is positivism. People in the West are very defensive about capitalism. The assumption is that if one is critical of capitalism, one is a communist. Capitalism is composed of the private ownership of the means of production in free markets. The problem with capitalism is the free market. The free market legitimizes private ownership. Private ownership distills all social relations down to the level of the market, mediated by supply and demand, or monetary leverage. There are three kinds of ownership: personal, public, and private. Capitalists confuse private with personal ownership. They are not the same. Personal ownership is a human right relating to our need for the assets that pertain to life. Private ownership is a legal right mediated by the state and is fictitious. The state cannot give rights it does not possess. The state does not own our natural resources. These are owned by the people by the right of dominion. The principle of subsidiarity precludes the state from allocating rights to natural resources to individuals and legal agents. Summary. These errors are all related and all collectively form the foundation of our present systems. We created and perpetuated government on the model of Babylon, and they acquired by force control over our natural resources, things by right owned by God and under the jurisdiction of the Church. Because the state gained control over the world's asset, it became the power that allocates and distributes what is called private ownership. Private ownership is legal ownership. It is ownership based on law rather than human rights, as personal ownership is. We need to distinguish the two ways of owning, because legalists try and confuse the two and link them together in people's minds. We do not own what the government allocates. Our property is always at risk of being confiscated or taxed or otherwise taken out of our control. Risk is a liability. The appreciation of risk led to the development of double-entry bookkeeping. Money is the icing on top of the cake. Money as an asset is double-entry bookkeeping manifest. It is in your pocket, but owned by the bank or the state. It is a liability and risk encapsulated. There is nothing you can do to stop it from being stolen through inflation. Social positivism. There is an alternative to the 5 errors of humankind. Positives refer to the solution as the 4 pillars of positivism: positive ownership, positive markets, positive democracy, and positive funding. These 4 pillars remove the risk that is prevalent in Babylon. Social positivism is a risk-reducing agency. We specialize in identifying and inoculating at-risk institutions and operations. Risk can be prevented and controlled. For more, visit our Facebook page and link to our social positivism website: http://socialpositivists.com. Thank you.